accepting candidates who might be interested in being considered. If we get applications from individuals in Groton, then we can move forward with interviewing those applicants, determining who might be best, and coming to a decision. And then voting to appoint an individual. That would be the process. Does anyone have any questions?
Should we have a date on or before July 1st or something like that, you know?
Well,
So we can get the applications and move on with the process.
yeah.
Otherwise, you got nothing. You know?
Any comment from the superintendent on that as far as timing goes?
Well, I
Is
should
for
think that
next-
we would want it as soon as possible. So if we set a deadline even the day of the next board meeting, the board could vote that night. So the next board meeting would be June 11th. If you say by July, I mean, if we can get it in the papers immediately.
Actually, May.
Well, we also have the flexibility of interviewing candidates at our
Right.
SAU board meeting.
Which is, well, if we, that's May 29th, so
Correct.
this is already the 14th, so by the time we get in the paper, that's only, I mean, you can interview and make the final decision on June 11th, I suppose. That way, if people, it seems like that's a quick turnaround time, because, I mean, there's deadlines, like, we'll miss the
Our
deadline.
deadline's tomorrow at 4.
Yes,
Hmm.
well, we could get that one in, but,
Well, and the citizens are daily.
so we can meet your deadline for posting is tomorrow at 4?
Enterprise is weekly.
All right, so we can get it in. I just wasn't,
Today, 14th.
Wasn't the Newfound
The
was
Enterprise
also
is
one of
this
the-
Thursday,
Okay.
for next Thursday's
No, it's
published.
not.
and
Well, how
she
many days you
sent
want to put in the
deadlines
paper?
tomorrow
10-day
at 4.
posting or what?
Deadline on
Proposed
Tuesday.
For Thursday?
but there-
And
there's
does
a-
does the town of Groton have a column in the
How many
paper,
days
too?
you usually post in the paper?
Yeah.
10 days or
So
what, or
if
something?
it
Or just
depends
once or
on the
something?
deadline.
And they,
I don't know. I
We have to
don't.
pay.
they have
Once.
already mentioned it in their column, and the Board of Selectmen have posted it already.
And Lou has already, he requested that before the letter was handed to the chair, that he wanted to speak to the town of Groton, and he has spoken to his selectmen. They have written it in the column in the Record Enterprise already a week ago. So it already has been advertised in the town of Groton, so,
So expediently,
yep, okay,
as soon as we can, and then based on progress, we'll move forward.
okay.
So
So will we have a motion on this? Or is this the end of
it's
the
up,
discussion
it's up
on
to
it?
us under action whether we want to do that or not. So, including honoring his request to append it to the minutes. Next item of business is other business. And I know Dan had wanted to do rates for electricity and to deal with the disposition of a starter pistol.
I have
Did you-
two things.
You have something also,
Yeah.
Lloyd?
Yeah, one is, would confer with Dan what we want to do about the Newfound Middle School grounds. Bring that up for action. And the other thing is, I like this, action is to see how the board feels about the formation of a special education committee from the board.
Okay.
On the action.
Special Ed Committee. Okay. So can we take anything else? Does anyone else have other business? Ruby, just as a reminder, at our last meeting,
I talked about the town and
you
gown.
talked about town and gown.
I think we're gonna be here late enough, and I can postpone that,
Okay,
if that's okay with everybody else.
all right. Given that, then we will, if there's no other business. Dan, you want to talk about rates for electricity?
Well, as I mentioned in my report, we're currently, your electric bill, if you look at your electric bill at home, it's similar to our electric bill. There's two major components to an electric bill. There's the transmission delivery piece, which is not something that there's any flexibility to. Whoever the utility assigned to your area is, that's who you got. In the case of Newfound, we have 5 facilities that are PSNH. One facility, the one we're sitting in, which is the co-op, New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and then we have one facility that is the New Hampton Village Precinct. What you can sometimes have some say in is the supply piece, the supply side of that equation, how much you're gonna pay for the supply of electricity. And as I mentioned in my report, we're currently paying about 8.6 cents kilowatt hour for the supply, and that's buying the supply from the same people we're buying the transmission and delivery from. I estimated in my report that we should be able to get that number down to about 7 cents. And before I go into any numbers, I would like to tell you that this is a commodities market that, like the oil futures market and every other energy market, fluctuates on a daily basis. So the numbers I'm gonna throw out to you that we could contract for immediately, if you authorize me to do so, would be numbers that are effective right now, as in today, tomorrow. But I won't project what they'll be unless we lock in on a long-term rate. I won't project what they're gonna be if we decide to look at it in 30 days. I think we're at a very low point in the market right now. Having been studying the markets and looking at them, I think the markets are at a very low point and about to start moving upwards as we get into the summer months. That being said, the motion I would propose would be that you would authorize the business administrator to enter into a agreement for the purchase of electricity supply from a entity called UMB Bulk Energy. UMG Bulk Energy. They are someone who has been involved with the process since we first put our RFP. They are a company that brokers electricity supply. I've done reference checks on them. I'm very comfortable with who they are and who they're supplying, and other customers such as the Laconia School District and the City of Merrimack and a bunch of other people right now. One of the two options that there are a number of companies who provide a number of options. I would ultimately, I will tell you that if you authorize, I would be able to enter into a contract with them to provide energy from a company called Constellation Energy. The two main players that we've gotten the most advantageous proposals from, one is called Constellation Energy, and one is Integris Energy Systems. And the big difference between the two, there's minor in price savings, minor cost differentials, but Integris would only be able to supply to our PSNH accounts, and Constellation Energy would be able to provide to both our PSNH and our electric co-op accounts. Just to give you an idea, we're talking about almost 45% of the electricity in the district happens in this building. 500,000 of our 1.2 million total kilowatts of electricity purchased on an annual basis come to this facility, and this is our one facility that's in the co-op. So to achieve the greatest savings, it's important that we have a supplier who has agreements with the co-op to transmit their energy, not just PSNH to transmit their energy. Does that make sense? So as recently as last week, the numbers between Integris and Constellation for I would suggest you might, because it's our first time doing this, we might want to start with a 12-month contract. And the numbers were down to either 6.4 or 6.3 cents per kilowatt from the 8.6 we're paying now. So it's a greater savings that was indicated in my report at 7 cents. And then seeing the difference between the ability to supply the co-op accounts as well, I went back to Constellation and said, sort of tried to leverage a position with them a little bit, and they came down late today to, I have the number, quote right here, hold on one second, I'm sorry. 6.19, so cents per kilowatt. We could lock in on, if we did an 18-month lock-in, and mind you, the numbers go up as you increase the length of the contract, but we could do an 18-month lock at 6.19 cents per kilowatt, which, in my opinion, is a substantial savings. It would cut closer to $20,000 off the electric bill on an annual basis versus the 10 I projected in my report. But once again, so the motion I would suggest would be appropriate would be for you to authorize me to enter into an energy supply agreement with UMG Bulk Energy.
Could you draft that and have it ready for the action items?
Sure.
Thank you. can you talk to the disposition of the starter pistol? I saw that in your report.
Sure. I think that all of the administrators in the district and program specialists and people who are responsible for various pieces of property are really doing a fine job helping us maintain low levels of excess inventory, if you will, through our active use of the surplus property policy. We just this week have had our annual inspections from various fire departments and received high compliments for how we are keeping the clutter down in the buildings. Not that this takes up much clutter, but recently when Mr. Coffrin advised me of a number of pieces of surplus property that we wanted to continue with this process of eliminating clutter, one item on his list was a .32 caliber pistol that was used for starting track events prior to the current technology. Is that a fair way of putting it, Pete?
Correct.
And that immediately raised a red flag for me under the notion of district liability. I would, when we have surplus property, we offer it up to sale to the highest bidder. I honestly have no interest in the district having the exposure that I perceive to exist with selling a firearm. I'm sure there are plenty of places to dispose of them safely, or even a firearm that used to be the district's property being out there. So whether it be turning it over to a police department for a destruction program, or if the board wanted to authorize some local business that is in that business to dispose of it properly and eliminate any liability, that's fine with me. I just wanted you to be aware there was, I didn't even know the asset existed. So I just wanted you to be aware of it, and
Got it.
if you want it thrown in a furnace and melted down, fine, I don't care. I just
Got it.
wanted you to be
We're
aware
pretty
of it.
close to public comment, and maybe some folks in the audience might have something to say about that.
I'm sure at least one will.
Okay, next topic is middle school grounds that Lloyd wanted to address. You recall that we are considering a change to the committees, of course. And in doing so, and by the way, I need to address the assignment of committees in lieu of absence, I guess.
Do you want to wait till you have your...
Yeah. Okay, Lloyd, can you share with us the correspondence we've gotten?
Well, I don't know, I forgot the fellow's name now. I've talked to him from Danbury, a woman there. Talked to her a few times.
Lady,
Yeah, a woman.
Mrs. Brown, I believe it was.
Gina Brown.
Common
Brown.
name, yeah. I got the thing home. And I looked at it a couple times, looked it over, and talked to her and talked to Dan. And I looked it over, and what it is, it's just plain dirt. It's lousy looking back there. It's a disgrace when you look at the back of that building. They use that rear door for a front entrance, and it needs some work done. They offered to put some flowers and some brush up. We wanted to see what we wanted to do with it, and I asked Dan. Dan looked at it. So as far as I was concerned, the best thing to do now is just to see if we can get it grassed in with the spray, like the field, with the stuff to make the grass grow, spray it.
Using her resources?
Well, that's the question. She had resources, but I think she wanted for flowers and a couple of trees to put up there as shrubbery. So that will come after we get the stuff sprayed. I was dancing, it shouldn't be too expensive. I don't know if Dan got a rough idea.
Well, we could consider a motion to direct the facilities committee to deal with it.
Well, you don't have this minutes. I think we should get some action. It's not that big a deal right now, and we're putting it off for almost a month.
That's what
And
I'm
we want to
saying.
get the grass going before it gets too warm.
So you may consider making a motion when it comes time to do so. to
I'm
do-
ready for
to do
action right now.
exactly.
But aren't you going to suggest that we may not have a facilities committee?
To the new facilities committee, that we direct the new facilities committee, which
No.
by then.
Committee.
No.
It
When
is
you said
not
you're
a
going to
committee.
consolidate committees into negotiations, Friends of Football Policy and Data.
He said you were going to be the facilities
Right.
committee.
So if we pass
Oh, okay,
that,
okay, all right.
then we'll
Just wanna
have a
clarify.
new one by the time we come to the
Okay.
middle school other business
Oh, we
items,
got this in
and we
order.
can make a motion to
Okay.
direct
Just want to make
you
sure we're
to
all on the
plant
same
the
page.
flowers.
Have you
Okay.
talked to
Or my
the
designee.
Pasquami Garden Club that
Well,
does the,
I think we're gonna, I
Stuff
told Dan, I think
for-
for us to take it,
town
go
of
by the
Bristol.
horns and get that thing sprayed and get it roped off, with some stuff, and see if we can get it started. The kids will be out of school shortly, so maybe we can get it going before the fall.
The initial
Get some good
request
system out.
came from Ms. Brown saying that she would like to take advantage of tidying the thing up and
Yeah.
that we needed to deal with it. So I asked for her indulgence until we sorted out the committee assignments, and now it's time to take action. So Lloyd jumped in.
So let her
and got some
do what she
background.
wants to do. Well, no, she wants to put flower. We gotta get some grass, some area, like mud, just looks
Wouldn't-
ruined. Gotta do it proper way, you know? Get a crew from
So-
Dan.
Well,
So we can
wouldn't-
take care of internally.
If she wanted to do some plantings,
Yeah,
say
well,
some
what-
small trees and flowers, wouldn't you want that done first and then you go and...
No, I didn't wanna
I
get
mean,
the
rope
grass
off
in.
where you want the grass to be, but otherwise they're gonna have to walk on the grass to get to the places to
Well,
plant.
that's all right, once the grass starts growing. She wants to put little flowers around and a couple, maybe we get a good shrubbery in the, you know, when we get laid out.
Do you have any input on this subject?
Sure. All the superintendent and I work for the superintendent, and we've been clearly directed to make all decisions with deference to the taxpayers. And if you got taxpayers willing to fund the improvements out of their own pocket versus coming out of my budget, I'd much prefer that.
Okay.
We just saved $10,000 on electricity.
Yet.
Okay, any further discussion on this? We'll deal with it as an action item. You had another item regarding special ed committee?
Yes, I think the board should form a committee of 3 to look into the special ed program and investigate the thing more thoroughly, so the public is up in arms about it, and we are. And a lot of us don't know half about what we should, and I think we should get the facts and report back to the board what we find out. I think that IPE, whatever this committee should be checked into and see where we're at with that. I think we need a committee that has the authority to look into this and report back to the board. Investigate it with other schools, the whole thing, the whole gamut. What we're required from the state and so forth.
In discussions with Lou, Vinnie, as also a member of the data task force, we have kind of discussed having that as our first priority of using the information from the data task force as a jumping off point and looking at that subject.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, I think.
There's
a lot.
also a lot of, we're researching, we've got an opinion that I just got this afternoon, and I haven't even been able to share with you, from the special education director at the state level, et cetera, as to just clarifying some more of the nuances of who's allowed to look at IEPs, et cetera. So I think that it could be redundant of the data task force, and they can dig as far as they're allowed to dig, as far as the law permits.
Well, 2 things on that. With respect to the data task force, it was just a comment suggesting that one of the things that
Right.
we looked at amongst the 16 districts was how we compared to other districts in general with
Right.
respect to special ed. So that could be a basis of comment. What I think Lloyd has in mind here, having expressed some admirable interest in reading all of this information that is available on special ed, which is indeed voluminous, including special ed rule 1100, all of the other information that is ongoing, passage of House Bill 1360 in the Senate. I think it's due tomorrow, I think, to be voted on in the full Senate, which identifies reasons why the Department of Education finds it necessary to exceed federal law in all the specific areas that it wants to do so. And some of them are valid. There are many that simply create additional administrative overhead and don't offer any benefit to either the recipient or the parent of the recipient of a special ed program. So it's an effort by the legislature to get that under control. I think the establishment of a committee to look at this would need to explore in detail what it can and cannot do.
Right, from the
and
ground
present
floor
to the
up, to
board.
see where we're at.
To the point that the superintendent just raised, what was the information that was obtained regarding?
Just, I didn't bring it tonight because it wasn't on the agenda, but I will forward that to you.
Okay, where was it from?
From the School Administrators Association Special Ed Department. They have like a special, a branch of the NHSAA to ask questions for free. Well, we pay a service each year to be members, so I can forward some legal opinions. So maybe we can table this till we get all the legal opinions, and then the board can decide what to do?
Well, there's that option, or we could formulate the committee and then decide to delve into it to the degree that
Yeah, I'm not looking at the
Meredith.
legislation, I want to see, what's going on here, or, where we're at.
Well,
Everything may be fine, everything's great, but just, we can work with Marie and that and find out where we're at and what, we got
Right.
one-on-one when we don't need one-on-one, and how our IEP is doing.
okay.
Compare
One
with
of
some
the
other
things
districts.
I would like to share on this topic, under this information right now, is the FERPA that is published and is consistent with our existing policies, JO and JOR. And the FERPA is an acronym for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And that talks about a number of different things regarding rights to review records, etc. And one of the bullets in it, which I would like to read, is the right to consent to disclosures of personally identifiable information contained in the student's education records, except to the extent that FERPA authorizes disclosure without consent. One exception, which permits disclosure without consent, is disclosure to school officials with legitimate educational interests. A school official is a person employed by the school as an administrator, supervisor, instructor, or support staff member, including health or medical staff and law enforcement personnel. A person serving on the school board. A person or company with whom the school has contracted to perform a special task such as an attorney, auditor, medical consultant, or therapist. Or a parent or student serving on an official committee such as a disciplinary or grievance committee, or assisting another school official in performing his or her tasks. Just wanted to share that portion of the FERPA as informational, which to me is contrary to what I've been told ever
Which-
since I've been on the school board.
Which is the legal opinion that I have that explains so I'll forward that to you tomorrow.
Right. Now, our policy says almost identically the same thing. Okay? I will tell you that research that I did last summer to deal with this, to determine whether or not this can be pursued to the degree that would satisfy me, which is to get to the atomics of what happens in creating an IEP, offers an interesting perspective, and I'll leave it at that for now. But I think it's probably a good idea to have a committee like this that you suggest, and let it go as far as it can go, certainly within the confines of the law. That is another area that I think we want to get a handle on, and much like Ruby has talked about in the special ed section of the TBDs and the need to provide those services by law, we have to be on top of this, and I'd like to do so in detail with that information. So perhaps a committee that can be formed would be willing to do that. Okay, we are now at, with no other business, public comment.
Well,
Could I ask a question under other business? It's just a quick
Well,
one.
you're at coincidentally the item on public comment, and so I can officially recognize you. What would you like to comment on?
It doesn't have anything to do with the agenda items, though. I was hoping to just squeeze it in before you got to the other part.
Well, I'm flexible. I like to
Okay.
communicate.
The last
What do you
meeting,
have
you
in mind?
mentioned that they had a listing of all the colleges that the students were going to.
Had
How
been
can I get
accepted.
that on the website?
I'll make sure it's posted on, if you looked under schools, under the NIHS.
I looked on your SAU website
So when you look on the
itself.
SAU website, there's a tab that says schools. And if you go under the Newfound Regional High School tab, I believe that should be listed under guidance, but I'll double check to make sure that that's posted. I know that they're updating it, and you got it?
There's an insert in this month's newsletter that lists the colleges that seniors have been accepted at. Would you find this informative?
But that changes with each new year.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't change much.
But I'd be happy to give you this copy.
Yeah. There's
This is
more,
where we
I
have so
think.
far, but it keeps updating, we're not finished yet, so.
And for the record, that was Bob Brooks from Hebron who whom I neglected, Leah, to ask him to state his name in town. But thank
Vinny,
you.
Vinny, just before you go into public, just one more update in the minutes on, I don't even know which minutes, I just circled them and made sure I said it. Marie Ross noted it would be a full credit-bearing course. We were taught, Mr. Leoto commented on the extra session of having an Algebra 1 and an Algebra seminar, and I said she will verify that information. And I verify that it does count for 1 math credit for the Algebra 1 course and 1 elective credit for the Algebra seminar course. So I was right that there is 1 full credit for each course next year, but one of them's a math credit and one's an elective credit, because we talked about having a 2-year program to get the Algebra 1 course.
Okay.
So there's my verification according to the minutes.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Harold Riley from Alexandria. And I guess I'm going to wear 2 hats, one to answer your question, Dan, about the gun. I'd be glad to advise you on the legal disposition of that firearm after the meeting here. Isn't it normal to appoint the next runner-up in an election process?
If that's a question to the board, to consider the fact that we don't have discussion on public commentary, I
Well,
can't.
I'm just looking in the Constitution here, the state of New Hampshire, that's customary in the Constitution, but I didn't know if it could apply here or not.
Well-
I didn't do a lot of research on that because they just, heard it here tonight, so just a quick look at the Constitution. But aside from that, why wasn't the board in a position to make a replacement here?
I don't understand your question, because
Well, there's an absentee
Yeah.
resignation
yeah,
of a member here.
which
And you
occurred on
stated
April
here-
24th.
You stated that the board wasn't in a position to make an appointment, so I was wondering why.
No, let me clarify. If you heard that, what I meant to say was, if the board cannot agree on appointing an individual who may express an interest in serving, then that gets resolved legislatively by the town's selectmen, who are in charge of making said appointment to the school board. So if we had a 3-3 tie to appoint someone, that would fail. As a result, in this case, the town of Groton selectmen would make the choice for the school board. But right now, we are under RSA jurisdiction to make the replacement, who would serve for 1 year until the next election, next March, if that person wanted to run for the remainder of the 2 years of the seat that's available. Now, to go back to your first point, which I'll take as informative, that the Constitution alludes to that. We'll consider that, certainly, and abide by it if possible. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that the individual that came in second in this case may be willing to serve. So we're not obligated to appoint that individual if, in this case, he chooses not to apply for the position. But we are obligated to interview candidates from the town in order to determine whom we think would be best qualified to replace the resigning individual.
Thank you. One other question here, talking about appointing an assistant principal, has this salary been figured into the budget?
Yes.
And it has, even though with all the cuts that we made in the previous budget
Do
here?
you want to answer that? It's a replacement for a current principal position.
Okay,
Who
then.
resigned. The
All right,
person
now you
resigned.
said you have 4 other positions here that you're filling. I understand that, you had made also many cuts there. They, how are those replacements being paid if we cut the budget?
They're all replacements, there's no additional positions. They're replacing people who've resigned.
Oh, okay. And
I'm sorry.
thank you very much for your work that you guys are doing. I Appreciate it.
Thank you. One last comment. Since we're going to make a motion to deal with the starter pistol, if you have some suggestions on that, and I would like to make the exception for you to offer us some advice in public this evening so that we can make an appropriate motion.
Certainly, without seeing the particular weapon and what its construction, BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, classifies a starter pistol as a firearm, just a regular handgun, depending on the construction of the gun. If it was made as a regular handgun with a plugged barrel and a short cylinder, it could be converted into a regular firearm. So that's why they consider it a regular handgun. If it was designed specifically as a starter pistol, with no capability of being used as a regular handgun, then it wouldn't fall under their jurisdiction. But I'd have to see the gun to actually determine that myself.
So what are you suggesting our action should be, given that you're a professional in the business?
Well, I don't know. Why do you want to get rid of it, first of all?
Well, I guess it's obsolete, is it not, Pete?
And track meets, we now use 22 caliber, so there's no use to keep it.
Okay.
Sue?
And couldn't the motion be to authorize Dan to properly dispose of it? So then he could do the research.
And he could consult with...
And he could consult with people who know this, yes.
Okay.
Well, if you authorize Dan to give it to Skip, he'll dispose of it. If it has any value, he'll sell it, and make a few bucks, but.
My concern is that my advice to you is to not sell it, is to destroy it.
Right.
Because someone buys it and does something bad with it, there's a potential liability to the district for enabling that person to have the tool to do the deed.
Right, for example, to use as in a bank robbery, for example, if someone gets killed, whatever.
Whatever.
That's a misconception. It's a total misconception. There's no liability. Once the weapon is transferred legally, it belongs to the next owner. Where it came from is in the past and has nothing to do with that. If it was taken illegally and transferred, then the liability would attach. But being transferred over to the next owner, no liability attaches to the previous owner.
Okay, well, there was reference in your report to, based on your knowledge of recent experience or what have you.
I agree, I would tend to agree with what Mr. Riley said about the attachment of liability. That won't stop a lawyer
Right.
from increasing your legal bills of defense
Right.
to prove the point that there's lots of people right away in the graveyard.
Anyone can sue anyone.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Mr. Belbin.
Yes, I used to be on the police, they used to turn them over to us to destroy. We give them a receipt, and we had them see that it was, in fact, we destroyed some guns to make them cry. But the owner wanted it destroyed, and then it's gone, and we destroyed the gun.
Yeah.
That's the end. Turn it over to the police, get a receipt for it, and he wanted it
Once the
destroyed.
cop takes it home and his kid
That's
steals
it.
it and shoots someone.
No, you give it to the police, and it's destroyed.
Okay.
There's some compensation here to come back to the school, such as, we take many trades in my business there. So if you wanted to trade the gun in for, say, a case of 22 blanks or something like that, that would be beneficial to the school, and we could still destroy the gun too, but whatever. What's financially beneficial to the school here? That's what I'd be looking at first.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Mr. Brooks?
I noticed a couple of corrections to put on this, so could I just hand it to Dr. Ross?
Sure, you can take that offline. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, there being no other public comments, I'd like to take a 4 or 5 minute break and then reconvene to talk about action items.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One second more. What was the House bill number on that?
HB
Senate bill number?
1360.
What was it?
1360,
1360?
yes.
That was a Senate bill, right?
It's a House bill.
House bill?
HB 1360. It's in the Senate for a vote, I believe, full Senate tomorrow. Are they in session tomorrow?
Yeah, we're in session, 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say goodnight. I'm hitting the bricks.
We're going to break briefly and then reconvene in no longer than 5 minutes. Watch yourself, Paul.
Good to meet you too. I have his more formal resume if you want the whole thing.
Hey,
Bill,
yes,
congratulations,
thank
our
you,
sympathies.
thank you.
Same to you.
You're Andrew's grandfather?
It doesn't really
Yes.
talk.
Yes, I.
Caught in a circular loop, but I don't know.
Because I've only had 2 open. Well, there's only 2 Internet Explorers. Okay, maybe.
All right, let's get action here, huh?
All right, hold on.
We're gonna close the gate in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I gotta go all the way around again.
Okay, we're now on to action items. Football Field Oversight Committee. We need a motion from...
You requested me to write something up.
Yes. What did I do wrong?
Angle prong.
Thank you. Okay, this is a request from the chair of the Football Field Oversight Committee. It says, on behalf of the Football Field Oversight Committee, I request permission for the Friends of Newfound Football to build the following structures and/or fixtures at the football field site. These would not be all done in the first year, but would be the goal of the Friends of Newfound Football as they move forward. Fencing around the exterior of the field, electronic scoreboard, electricity to needed structures, press box, goal posts, storage building, well, and bleachers. Is there a motion to comply with the request as written?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Paul and seconded by Sue to accept the request dated May 14th of Peter Coffin, Chair of the Football Field Oversight Committee, to identify these 8 items and get permission to go forward with purchases. Any discussion? Okay, there being none, I'd like to ask all those in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, the motion passes as written. Is there another copy for Leah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, in addition, I don't know what you would like to do with the pole that the co-op is willing to donate to us.
The polls?
I mentioned earlier that the co-op is willing to donate some telephone poles that they've
Oh, the
taken down,
poles.
but have chemicals on them, and I don't know what your disposition of that would be.
I think that we're gonna need to have more information to move forward on that, because if there's a chemical issue, and that might be the reason they're disposing of them, I'm gonna wanna know more about that. I think, in general, the whole purpose of, the committee is to minimize liability. So, on behalf of both Newfound, School District and, of course, the Friends of Football. So can you report back to us when you...
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you for your work on this, Pete, and your patience in staying with us this evening. It's been a long meeting. Okay, this passed 6-0-0-0. Next item is response to the April 9th Student Council Liaison. I don't believe there's any action necessary on this. If anyone thinks otherwise, please let me know now or forever hold your peace. Seeing none, we will move on to item 3, discussion regarding school board elections. You heard the discussion, and is there a motion to take any action on what Mr. Brooks has brought to our attention?
Was that or the other one?
I'm sorry?
Is that his article or the article for?
It's a question of what we want to do regarding school board elections. My inclination is we've had the discussion on it, and we understand that he's willing to assist us at educating the public. I think that if the board is so inclined, we can encourage him to create a warrant article and have the board consider presenting it at the next deliberative session. If the board is disinclined to do that, then he has the right to do so for a petition warrant article, which means that the issue could also be tabled and taken up at another time, perhaps in the December, January timeframe, if he were to come back and suggest that he's discovered new information. That's another option. The other end of that spectrum is we can decide to take no action on it at all. But you have your red folder with all the data and information on it. Does anybody have any comment?
Yes, I haven't had time to read the whole red folder, so I don't want to act on it yet, because I haven't read, you know, how we were founded and.
Yeah, I make a motion, we table.
Motion to table has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Belbin. Motion to table is not debatable. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have tabled action on school board elections topic. Okay, item D, consolidation of committees. Is there a motion?
I move you consolidate the committees as you suggested at the beginning.
Okay, the motion is to consolidate committees by eliminating the facilities committee and assigning that. I'll go slowly here, Leah, so that you can follow me. I believe I heard you say that you would agree to make a motion to consolidate committees and assign the facilities committee responsibility to the superintendent for oversight and management, and to eliminate the finance committee, leaving for us the collective bargaining agreement committee, the Friends of Football Oversight Committee, the policy committee, and the data task force. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Is there a second?
It's the negotiations committee is what you haven't called it collective bargaining.
I'm sorry, the negotiations
And the
committee.
football field oversight committee, not the Friends of Football Oversight Committee.
Did I say that? Yeah, sorry. It's getting late.
He's in a friendly mood.
I know you, I'll accept a friendly amendment. You got that, Leah? Okay, is there discussion?
What happens to the committees that are no longer committees?
They're disposed of. They're disbanded officially by this motion.
So,
They being,
like for finance, how would that function?
there is no, is there a description?
Well, there was a description, yes.
It's
But-
basically that any school board member can and should take turns to come in and sign manifests, and there wasn't really any other function for that committee. It hasn't operated as such in 7 years I've been here.
Yeah. Let me elucidate a little
Yeah.
bit on what prompted the desire to do this. There was a legitimate question posed regarding the posting of an official board committee. And we need to adhere to those rules, particularly for that particular committee. Well, my feeling is that that's also true for the other committees, and they were not adhered to in the past. There have been kind of loosey-goosey arrangements with the Facilities Committee, and perhaps the Finance Committee never really met. So the question came about whether we should continue to have those committees and therefore eliminate the need for posting, minutes, record of actions, right to know, which is the most important perhaps of all those committee requirements, which you need to comply with, including getting the minutes to the public within 5 days, at least in draft form. All those kinds of things were essentially not being complied with. I want to comply with state law, very literally, and to make it easier for us to do that, we can enforce basically what would be 3 standing committees between the Football Field Oversight Committee, the Policy Committee, and the Data Task Force, and then, of course, collective bargaining by definition, which is the Negotiations Committee.
And for the public's edification, you ran this by the New Hampshire School Board's attorney, and he's the one that suggested that we would consolidate because we had way too many committees.
Yes. So that's the motivation behind it.
Can I also say, we're just looking at the notes from that night, he said to disband the facilities committee, appoint the superintendent or designee to oversee, appoint a board liaison to talk with them as needed, and write a policy to set this up. He said finance is not a committee, legislative is not a committee.
Right.
So I interpreted those to be set up the same way as the facility.
Yes, and I've been
Sue?
here about 11 years. The Finance Committee has never had a meeting, okay?
Yeah.
Finance Committee goes, signs the manifests individually, or sometimes one will show another, a new person coming in, how to do it. They sign the manifest. It was listed that the auditors would present the audit to them before, instead of the full board, or before the full board, prior to. I think that happened a couple of times way back, and that's it. And as far as choosing auditors, I don't know if that was in there or not, but the Finance Committee never did that. So that's about what that has consisted of. The Finance Committee is kind of expected to be the ones to sign the manifests if no one else does, but everyone is expected to. Everyone, when we vote to approve the manifest, we are all approving those manifests, and we're giving that responsibility of looking at those to whoever goes in and signs them, and we're trusting that they've done a good job. Anyone, should look at the manifest and
Right. So
could sign them, is encouraged to.
the activity, that responsibility lies with the entire board.
Entire board,
Because all
yes.
7
And
names,
legally,
or legally all 7.
we have to have 2. Legally, we
Right.
have to have 2 names.
Right.
We did set a sort of a, you wouldn't call it a policy, but a custom, I guess, a preference that 4 board members sign, but
Couldn't get it done.
we might have got that 1 or 2 months.
Well,
And
I
that's
wonder
it.
if we shouldn't write a policy then that records this history, that says at least 2 people have to be liaisons.
Well, the law says that 2 people have to sign the manifest.
Would it be all
Before you
right
can
if we
approve.
had one person, like, I'm thinking somebody like, say, Sue was in charge of finance, not a committee, but she can work with her and find out when it's done, what's not, and then she can say to the board, hey, I need these signed, or what, and call somebody up to do it, or what.
Well,
You don't have a board.
And this
She's
is what I
essentially
did.
performing that
Yeah, I know
role
it
now.
is. I know
Yeah.
it.
Okay, and the expectation is that at least the expectation I have is that the newer members use that for new knowledge about how the board is run, because it focuses on expenses and what have you, and you can educate yourself by just going through that, looking at them, and then signing off on them. The minimum requirement, as I understand, is 2 signatures, which takes the burden off the remaining 5 members of the board to have to go in and sign them.
Right.
But we do have to vote on approving the manifest. And again, it's post facto. The expenses have been paid. There are times when you do this activity that you may find an error. I believe I may have found 1 or 2 in the first couple of years I did it.
Not
but
often.
usually they're minor and they can be explained and what have you. So
Yeah.
that's the oversight responsibility. So the motion on the floor is to disband the existing committees that have been identified with the explanation that we have not been following procedure, which is to post right-to-know subject, minutes, report to the board, etc. Those two committees being finance and facilities, incorporating the fact that we are assigning the superintendent to be responsible for oversight and management of facilities. Any further discussion?
The only other, oh, sorry.
I just feel, yeah, there is, I just feel, anybody, having nobody in charge on the board looking after anything, you got nothing. Because they say, oh, I thought you were gonna sign manifest, and you were gonna, nobody signed, I signed it last month.
I don't agree with that.
Doesn't-
There's no,
I don't agree with that. It's
well,
a
that's what'll happen, they're gonna say,
responsibility.
I signed it last month, they don't show up for 3 months, and then they don't
Lloyd,
sign
may I
it.
address your question?
Yep.
I don't agree with it. It's a responsibility of all 7 of us to do that.
Yeah,
It's impractical to expect that all 7 of us will do so in time for each monthly meeting. Therefore, we have to continue to get those of us that are doing it to continue to do so. As I just stated, the newer members should, for their own edification,
right.
make the effort to go in and perform this function. That makes at least, counting Sue, who has traditionally done it, that makes at least 3 people, maybe a 4th when we get another new number, who will be doing that. If it turns out that we cannot approve manifests at the end of the meeting, we're going to have to take different action, which comes full circle back to Ruby's suggestion that a policy be written to deal with this.
And it was actually Barrett Christina's suggestion.
And Dan will remind folks to say, we're getting close to audit time, I have 3 months that aren't signed, where is that? And we could, if you'd like us to have a line in his report that says, that he can double check with Leah to say how many.
Manifest status.
Manifest status, we can put that into the business administrator's report.
Manifest, that's the word.
Or we can put the status of manifest signing so that you have, and it's not a happenstance,
Yeah.
it's.
I think
Don?
it needs to be somehow formal. It doesn't necessarily need to be a committee. You know, similar setup, the way I read what Christina said at that meeting was that finance and the other ones that are being no longer called committee would have another organization and still perform the function.
Right.
Like I went in and reviewed some of the manifest today, and I came up with questions that I might want to share with those designated to be on the non-finance committee.
Well, again, I think that,
I don't know, I think you gotta fix
is there a
responsibility.
misunderstanding that we all share that responsibility?
No, but there's
Or not.
also, you know, the audit issue too. There was some discussion about whether the non-finance committee would also be responsible for the audit issues.
And to be a committee, it'd be assignments, that's all, you know, so to speak.
Well,
Well, then you'd have to make it at
You're at the
a
meetings, you're not gonna discuss anything, you're just gonna do that procedure, that's all.
board meeting.
okay, mechanically, to accomplish this, if we were to approve the motion before the floor, before the board right now, then we could subsequently make an additional motion to develop a policy to deal with the issues that you are concerned about. Rather than complicate the existing motion, that would be the chair's preference at this point. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to disband facilities and finance and assign facilities to the superintendent for oversight and management? There seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Lloyd has voted no, Bristol in the negative. Any abstentions? None. Okay, question, Leah?
Who seconded that motion?
I believe,
Not me.
I have Paul.
I have Paul moves, no second.
and didn't Sue second?
I must have, yes, I did.
I thought you did.
You did now.
I don't think I did, but I did now. I would have,
Could have,
I don't know, maybe I did.
All right, moving right along.
That a boy.
Are you okay with that, Sue?
Yes,
Yeah, she's
Okay.
all right.
All right, Sue seconded the motion. Okay, so we have consolidated committees. Is there further action regarding that subject? I would entertain a motion to create a policy to deal with what is considered to be open items on finance.
I don't even think that's necessary.
Do we need a motion? Can't we just put that on our agenda for the
Yeah.
next policy committee meeting?
Well, given that we've disbanded the finance responsibility, and there's this issue about it, I think we should go on record as saying what we're gonna proactively do to make a change.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to direct the policy committee to come up with a policy to address the manifest issue.
All right, so moved.
Okay, it has been moved by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Belbin has seconded that motion.
We gotta do something, you can't leave it hanging like that, right?
Is there discussion? Yes, Marie.
I would suggest that the motion